Right, all right, then we call to order the Quiet Zone meeting of January 22nd. The first item on the agenda is the GPI project status. So if I could turn it over to John Diaz, and he has his slides shared with us to take us through where we are.
Oh, thanks.
Happy New Year, everybody. Here we
New
go
Year.
again.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
start something new here. So, Bill Scully from Kimley Horn is also, joining us remotely. So they'll be helping us out with this. But what I wanted to do is just kind of give an update of where we are, what we've kind of discovered, since the beginning of the year, basically in the last couple of weeks, just going through some stuff, and then it's really just more of a discussion. I mean, this isn't a formal presentation, so just stop and ask questions, along the way. So what we've done is I'm trying to put together the contact list, so before we leave here, I wanna make sure they have everyone's at least phone number or at least their email, so that we can, if we're distributing stuff, we have that. We've reached out to make some contacts with MBTA, Keolis, and Federal Railroad, so we have the names of the people there that we're dealing with. Had some discussions with Lou from FRA, last, I guess what are we today? Today's already Monday. Yeah, late last week sometime, got some information from him. Not sure whether we need a meeting or not, but at least we have the people that we know to reach out to. We've done the flights at all the crossings, so we have updated UAS maps of that we can use for looking at the concepts that we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes. Tom, I managed to get the crash data from the FRA, so we don't have to worry about getting the more details from the police. All they need is the number, and it's in their database by crossing, so I have it. I was able to get it from the last 10 years, so.
Right.
Which there were no accidents in any of the crossings, so, which is the good news. So we can take that last part off. So this is just the list I have together so far of people, but like I say, we can come back and I can check that against the people here tonight, and if there's anyone that should be on there that isn't, or vice versa, if I have old names that shouldn't be on there, so. So just to get into a little bit of it, like I said, I was able to pull from the Federal Railroad, their websites. They have a lot of data in there. They have all the crashes for basically any at-grade crossing across the US. So just that there were 94 crashes, MBTA crashes it was January 2014 through basically December 23rd. 6 in Norfolk County and 0 in Needham. The 6 that were in Norfolk were two in Cohasset, 1 in Randolph, 1 in Holbrook, 1 in Weymouth, and 1 in Braintree. So good news is there's in the past at least 10 years, there haven't been any accidents at any of these at-grade crossings. The other thing we did is,
May I ask a question?
yeah,
We're putting that up, a meeting member. The crashes existed, were they the failure of mechanics or just the negligence of the driver?
well, there were no crashes in Needham.
Right, I know that.
I didn't go into the details of the ones that weren't here because there weren't any in Needham. I'm sure there are details in there. It's a comprehensive list. I'm sure they have conditions and all that. I could look into it, but since there were none in Needham, I stopped at that level.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm sure this group understands what the process is in terms of to apply for the quiet zone, you have to show that your quiet zone risk index is lower than the existing condition, which if you look at that, up there, so this is the existing conditions here. So basically it's just the gates and your index with the horns. Basically what it is today is, and I don't even know what these numbers mean in terms of order of magnitude. It's just a number, but about 20,000. So if you were to put a quiet zone in without doing anything there, the risk factor would go up to 34,000. Obviously that going up is bad. So we looked at, how can I get rid of the,
Maybe if you just minimize the
Yeah.
people, do the one, yep.
okay. I was still online that way.
I'll move
That's
it.
all right.
Maybe.
That's fine. That's good. So basically, this is all from the FRA. This is their calculator, the quiet zone calculator that's online. So basically what you do is you put in daily traffic that's out there. All this data was in there, so it was more verifying it. We are getting new counts, just, I don't think the volumes have changed that much or will affect any of this too much, but I just want to make sure we have, we're kind of, in case there's any questions from them, that we have updated, data in there. So if we just put quad gates at all 5 of the crossings, you go from 20,000 to 6,200, so that's good. I looked at, since we're in the process of looking at, Great Plain Ave downtown, if you added a 4-way gate there and like a median there, it would drop it a little more, bring it down to about 5,300. So obviously, those are all good
Well, and
numbers.
all of those are way below this, right, nationwide
Right.
significant risk threshold up at 15.5 almost.
Yeah. And then, there was talk about medians. One of the problems or issues with the medians is a lot of driveways very close to the track crossing, so it's, some of them you might be able to do, and some driveways you might be able to relocate. We can obviously talk about that as we go further, but just kind of looking at that treatment, you actually do pretty well. So the flexible medians are the, you know, basically the tall pylons that you see, like usually in construction zones of those types of, I call them temporary, but they're not really temporary, but flexible median. So again, you go from 20,600 to 8,600. So you could do that as a treatment. If you want to go to permanent medians, it's probably a little difficult on these roads just because of the right of way. In terms of, you know, if you put like a 3 or 6 foot median, a lot of those roads are pretty narrow. But again, that would go from about a 20,000 to 6,800. So those are all viable options for what you can do for the quiet zone. And we can mix and match depending on the locations, but
So
How far, go ahead,
I
go ahead.
was gonna say, you have an asterisk under the medians, but is that true for all 5 of the crossings, or is there ones that you think are better suited?
pretty much. I looked at them online, drove through most of them, like over the past couple of days, just driving around. Most of them have driveways that are pretty close. What I'm trying, I haven't found the answer to this yet, but what I want to see is there a minimum distance? Like, is 20 feet enough? Is 50 feet
That's what I
enough?
was gonna
Yeah.
ask.
I don't know what that answer is yet, but that's something either I can dig up or I'll ask the MBTA or Keolis as we go further. But there are some that are right on top of the driveways, like Oak Street. I mean, those are residential driveways right at the
Yeah.
crossing, so I don't think you do much there. Up on May Street, that one approach, it looks like you could maybe get some distance on it. Maybe move the funeral home driveway a little or do some circulation things there. So there might be some options you could do there, but then you go out to, you know, we just did the town commons up at the Heights. I mean, that road comes out right at the track, so, you know,
Right.
so
And
we
on
might be.
Rosemary, there's a driveway, like literally, which
Yeah.
actually isn't a great place for a driveway anyway, but.
No, so
So-
that's what I mean. So you might.
It could
be able
maybe
to-
get moved.
The good news is for all these well, I think, at least as long as I double check, but you have equipment on 4 corners because you have the peg gates that come down. So you've already got the electronic, you know, cabling and the guts coming in there. So it would just be a matter of, you know, you might have to do something creative to get ped access by, because obviously you'd be going from a smaller post to a much larger post for a gate. They call them quad gates. I don't know if on these you could just go with a longer arm that covers the entire road. That might be an option too, and that's something we can discuss. They don't phrase it that way here, but it accomplishes the same thing. You're blocking the entire road. So that might be an option too with some of those. If you don't have enough room, you could take the whole sidewalk for that. Could you do, you know, a 40 or 50 foot gate rather than the 20-foot gate?
I mean, I imagine that's more of an option in the streets where you only have 2 lanes of traffic. versus
Right.
The downtown where you
Yeah,
have 4.
downtown, I would think you would go with quads there, but.
It's helpful, just from what I understand on the medians, the length issue is really on the egress side of the crossing, so. On the approach side, you're approaching into a gate, and so driveways coming into it is not an issue. What the issue is on the egress side, the pipe where you're leaving the tracks, because if there's no gate there. And a driveway, and the minimum distance from what I understand is 60 feet. If it's a commercial or 4 units or more residential. Otherwise, even if it's a residential driveway, you can just put signage that says right turn only. And the theory is, from what I understand with the FRA regs, if someone's living there, they understand they should not be driving left into the trains. But if it's within the 60 feet, you can't have commercial unless you an alternative safety. Convert an SSM into an ASM, if you can make the case, the FRA, that engineering work, like there's an example of that in Cambridge.
Yeah.
But, so there is some, parameters around.
Yeah, I'm not thinking so much about worrying about the drivers turning like into the tracks. I'm like access, if they can't make a left out of their driveway, a median there, that's gonna be a concern.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of whether there's a train there or not, so. So I put this table together. These costs aren't costs that we've come up, like, this is just costs that they, if you go back to these, that they, put a cost, estimated total cost, that's just, I guess, a number that they carry for different types of treatments, so this is not verified, you know, but it puts it, gives you an order of magnitude. Obviously, we would, as we go further and figure out what we wanna do, we'll refine the cost, but that just puts kind of it in comparison, of the alternatives.
Are those per installation or total?
That's total, which seems, I mean, for maybe for the flexible median, 65 makes sense, but I don't think for quad gates. I mean, I guess if that's all you have to do is fix the gates, maybe, but you have to get it.
Yeah, the controls or anything, yeah, okay.
So again, these numbers haven't been vetted or anything. It was just more of just taking the numbers off that table, but I just wanted to put it in there just for comparison. I mean, like I say, the good news is you have some options of what you can do, at least according to the SSMs. What we can physically do out there is a different story, so.
Duncan has his hand up.
Duncan.
Duncan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, exactly. These are very notional numbers. FRA is probably trying to look at a median or a typical grade crossing situation, which might not look a whole lot different from what you see on the screen there. We're talking outside urbanized areas on average. So it probably assumes, there's like next to no cost for right of way and a number of other things which probably don't apply in Needham, which is why serious additional consideration will need to happen.
Absolutely. They're also probably average across the US, which obviously doesn't
Yeah.
bode well for us up here.
Right.
Yeah.
This is an example of flexible
Yeah,
barrier.
that's what the flexible barrier would look like. Now, that looks like it's about 200 feet before the track, but I don't know what the minimum is. I did come across some examples where they were about like 50 feet or so, which seems to be a little more reasonable. I mean, you just want it enough so the car feels like they're not gonna cross the road to the other side, obviously, so.
You would think that distance would be somehow related to speed?
Absolutely.
Well, not necessarily, because I mean, all the median is doing is preventing the car from essentially going around the
Going
gates.
around the gate,
Right,
right?
so I mean, if you can, it's where would someone feel comfortable if you got, most of these crossings, except take Great Plain Ave, because that's a bigger crossing, but like Oak Street, May Street, those streets, you might have like one or two cars stopped at the track. So if you had 50 feet and you were that third car coming up, you're probably not gonna go around it, but if you have, 4 cars backed up, you might wanna have that 200 feet back so that fifth car coming in feels like they're in that protected or blocked off area, so.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm just looking at this one and thinking somebody's driving on a country road at, 50 miles an hour.
Well, it's a nice traffic calming
and-
device.
But yeah,
Can you plow around that, Karis?
Well, it's more because the plow hit it when it goes around, but I mean, they have those in Boston around bike lanes and you just build in a replacement schedule,
Yeah.
basically.
Are there any other software mechanisms or anything besides the costs we see there for the quad? Is there any other requirements at all in terms of sensors and backups and all that kind of stuff?
I haven't got
Got
that
that far
far,
yet?
far into it, yeah,
Okay.
this was just basically going in and plugging the numbers into that calculator so that we could, verify that, okay, quad gates would meet that requirement, then depending on what treatment, like this is obviously West Street, so like, here you got the new green that was sidewalks that we've just done, obviously that road's gonna stay there. And unless you were to make that a right turn only into the tracks, you really can't do much for a median, in this section. In this section, you maybe could.
I would have guessed that 95% of the cars there turn right. They use it as a shortcut to
It's funny,
avoid the
every
light.
time I'm
That's
there,
what
someone's
they're
turning
doing,
left in
so.
front of me to go out.
Really?
Yeah,
Man,
I think it depends on, yeah, I don't know why. I wouldn't expect someone to turn left, but every time I'm at that light, someone's turning left out of there.
But there's nothing that would prohibit the town from deciding that we just would prefer
Right.
it to be
Yeah.
a right turn only
Right.
from a
Yes.
traffic flow
Exactly.
perspective
Yeah.
and to protect the
Exactly.
intersection.
yeah.
The other thing that I don't,
Preemption at the signal gives me a moment of pause.
well, I
don't
just,
know what
I
to
just
say.
wanna,
I got a few scars left from.
I just wanna bring that up because, I mean, if we were doing new signals within 200 feet of an intersection, you would be required to preempt it. So I don't know if we go to change any equipment out there and go to quad gates, if they're gonna require that. I mean, all of these crossings are 200, I think the longest one is like 300 feet
Yeah.
or so away, so I just put it on here, just because it's something and that could obviously increase the cost significantly, so.
So John, we have this corridor of Highland Ave also on the tip.
Yeah.
In which we had plans actually before we did that to redo the intersection of West and Highland.
Mhm.
I believe if we were to redo the intersection of West and Highland, and BTA might also
Yes.
require a preemption, so I think it maybe an inevitability one way or the other, just.
And honestly, I mean.
Can you explain how the preemption might
Sure,
work to
yeah.
people?
You
who
can
aren't-
have other reasons to hate the trains, but they'll be silent.
So the,
Careful of the boxes, please, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd use them
Sorry.
all, but it jumps around a lot. So the preemption, what it would do is you basically want to make sure that this area is clear, right? So what it would do is that you'd have a regular signal on this side, just like downtown, the big controversial pre-signal we all know about. You'd have one here and you'd have one here. The intersection basically controls it this way, so you wouldn't have to necessarily have another one here. You can usually get away with that one. But basically what it would do is you would just, it would be functioned so that this would go yellow and red a few seconds before this did, and you would clear this out. You just want to make sure that that track is always clear. That's all it is. It's just another signal head there that ties into the traffic signal. What it requires is a conduit run and a physical connection to the railroad box. And there's a gate clearance time that's basically built into every circuit, and that they'll say they give you 60 seconds, and in that time, you gotta get the gates down and the intersection cleared. So that's basically it, but, so I just basically sketched up what these would look like with the quad gates. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Put 4 gates at every cross. But again, whoops. And so then we go to Rosemary again. This is, like you say, we got the,
There's the library and the medical building.
you got the
and
library
park.
right there, you got the residential, and there's the parking lot for the upper part of the pool, which is, again, that's maybe far enough away that you could start, do a median from that point on. But then you would block off the driveway to the north there. And obviously you don't want to block the driveway to the library. So again, it's iffy in terms of whether it could work there. Same thing, this one, you're a little further from the signal, about 300 feet, but again, it might, that whole preemption could come up. May Street, so,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
the preemption would come up regardless of which choice we go through, right? If we were to go to
it
a
could,
median,
it might, I mean, they may,
But if you don't touch if you don't touch the infrastructure, they may not, right?
see, I don't know. I don't know like how it's.
Okay.
Like Mass DOT, you put a shovel anywhere near an intersection, you're into ADA, right? So I don't know if it's like, okay, we're just even thinking about a quiet zone here. They're gonna say tie it in and make sure it's, I mean, it would certainly build in additional safety and, further the cause for the signal if we were willing to do it. Whether it would be a requirement or not, I don't know yet, but definitely something we would, have to figure out. So May Street, so here, on this side, like, to me, that looks like a good approach where you could do a median there. On the other side, might be a little trickier. This parking lot in particular. The funeral home does have 2 access point, so you might be able to do something there. And if we could figure out something with this driveway, this to me looks like the best option of where you might be able to do those, like flexible barriers or medians there.
So if you did them there, the cars coming out of that parking lot would have to go right, presumably.
Yeah.
We just make that decision, okay.
And
That's not the worst thing.
the other thing is right in too. Don't forget, because they wouldn't be able to come down and turn left. That's probably the bigger headache, because now they'd have to go down through town, come back around, cross the tracks on Great Plains.
So you're talking about the driveway in the bottom right
Mhm.
corner? Yeah, so that one is one where it's within 60 feet of the crossing, and if there's not a gate on the outbound side, so the bottom right corner gate, if there's not a gate there, it can't be there. A commercial driveway can't be within 60 feet of a train crossing. You can request to get an alternative safety measure, you can shorten it. You have to demonstrate to the FRA that the shorter distance would be acceptable, so you could relocate the driveway to the right by removing that one tree and tree island and
Yeah.
reconfiguring the parking and pursuing an ASM, but where it's at now, you couldn't do.
Okay, now I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you were saying the outbound
On
side,
the
I was thinking
outbound
the
side.
other way, but
Yeah.
I get it now,
Because
because
if
they
there's
could
not
take a
gate-
left.
Yeah, if you did a two,
Right.
if you kept the two quad gate and you have the outbound lane there.
That's open to the track still.
Exactly, they
Yeah.
could just turn left,
Yeah.
to try and beat the train.
Oh, all right, now I'm getting it too.
Yeah, when you said it before, I was thinking the other side, I
other
wasn't
way,
quite
yeah.
getting it, but
Yep.
this is a perfect example of that, so, that makes a lot of sense.
And then in terms of the turning geometry, one thing which I didn't even know until like last month, and I saw that garage right next to the tracks is where they park the hearses. So when they pull them out, they back out right across the street to then move them around. So
Yeah.
that, again, in terms of worrying about impacts, it might be
Mhm.
something to think about with the median. I don't know if they didn't have the room, if they would be able to move it in a tighter turn, but just
Right.
something else to think about in terms of impacts might affect them.
And then we come to Great Plains, this is my great sketch, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. But this is obviously showing something like, obviously we got the project on Great Plains, the downtown project that's coming in. This kind of, if you narrowed it up and tightened it up, did parking bikes and all that, you could still have a median in there, which may carry even further than the railroad tracks for that project, but kind of gives you a sense of, what you would be potentially be looking at there, so, I mean, the good part is for at least these five, there's solutions, of course, now we come to the Oak Street. Man, I built it up and I still had one more. Oak Street again is, you got those driveways and those are all tight residential driveways.
I think one is commercial too.
Yeah, so, but again, you've got those, the equipment is already there, so if you just are going from, basically it's a little short, probably an 8-foot post now with a little
Pedestrian
4-foot
yeah.
thing on, you go into a bigger thing, at least the guts and conduit and all that is there, so you may have to move it a little with, ADA clearances and all that, but you got something there at least, so. So now we come to the golf
Ooh,
course.
good picture.
So, where do we want to start with the golf course? So the issue is you can't start a quiet zone with a private crossing. If it's within a quarter mile of a public crossing, it can be considered, but you don't have a public crossing. The closest one is Oak Street. And then I went pretty much all the way into Boston. There is like nothing going into Boston. So like, even if you had one, 2 miles into Boston, you could convince Boston to make that part of the quiet zone. You could get this in, but there's nothing.
There's no grade crossing.
There's no grade crossings. I think there's a couple of crosswalk crossings at one of the West Roxbury stations, but there's no public, like, major road crossing. So I know, Kate, you had said, well, what if we put gates or lights or something out there? You could, but it's still a private crossing. So that doesn't change the fact that it's a private crossing.
So if it's a safer private crossing, why can't it be quiet?
Because you can't start a quiet zone.
Is
with a
there an
private-
appeal?
There could be, but I don't think I mean, that's pretty much their standard is you can't start or end it with a private crossing. So it's like the only way you could get rid of that is to do some kind of grade separation there.
Which would be going over or under?
I think, I know there was some sketches done. This is, again, very, very preliminary. So we did the drone flights out there, right? And so if you look at the height of the track here, it's about 134, right? And I'm assuming you'd want at least a 10-foot clearance there, maybe 12, but I would say a 10-foot would probably be minimum to
I mean,
get
width or height?
height wise, to get equipment under there. So you want to be down about 124. If you start to go out here, you're already down a couple feet, right? Along here and out here, you're down 132. So just going back to this, right? Just the track comes up about 2 feet from the surroundings there. So what I was looking at, like, I know that the other plans were pretty comprehensive, but you might be able to, I mean, if you do a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 slope, which on a golf course for, golf carts, to go down 10 feet, you'd have to go out, what, 20, 30 feet or so. So it wouldn't be that far that you would have to go. I would think with those yellow lines would be like a retaining wall or something. I think you could just slope it down, fairly. The other one, I know the sketches had these, changing all the paths of the golf course and all that, but again, I don't know, we'd obviously have to look at it in more detail than this. But if you did some walls, could you just bring it down kind of gradually from those paths as they come in? The one kind of on the bottom going up, that where that arrow starts is down around 125, 124 feet. So that would almost be flat coming in. It would just be bringing the other paths down. If you kind of surrounded the paths with a wall, you wouldn't affect any of the course itself.
You'd stay on the same path, you just go down and under?
Stay on the same path, support it with walls, and then do the culvert underneath.
And so that would be wide enough for the
You
golf course, but what about the equipment? I think that was.
Well, you
one of
could
the
make
main
it as wide
concerns.
as you want. I mean, I.
The issue at the time was the T had a standard culvert and they were willing to put it in, but it wasn't big enough for the equipment. So if you made it bigger,
Or if you made it bigger, you could do, I
I
mean,
think I said 12-foot wingspan, I think.
a culvert it would be the easiest way to do, but you could build it. I mean, there's nothing says you have to do it as a preform culvert. You could build it, if you do have to go bigger. But we would have to find out what the dimensions are, both height and width, but I mean, it seems like it's fairly feasible. I mean, I wouldn't go up, because going up, you would be, with ADA and all that, you'd have to chase for
Yeah, you'd be
miles.
doing
Yes, I know,
good
I
fast
saw.
Saw the
all
drawing.
I saw the drawing, yes. So I mean, it's basically, I mean, you would either have to be looking at something like this, some kind of grade separated, or you take that out and you do your quiet zone from Oak Street up. I mean, that's kind of,
So the questions I had is it still worth it to do it from Oak Street up, and what is the impact if you did do it? So how do you gauge the train horn?
A noise study type?
Yeah,
thing?
assuming that if you live on High Street, it would be a big difference by having a quiet zone from Oak to West, right?
Right.
But, can you show that cool, moonlight picture? I mean, that person, I think we know pretty well at this point. Right, or that one,
yeah.
this is not gonna help them at all if we have to read it.
Why can't, I understand it's not a quiet zone, but aren't we have an option to negotiate an agreement with MBTA directly on something alternative to doing either a culvert or a bridge? Like, in other words, can't we make a case to the MBTA if we're going to install the same safety measures as the FRA says is safe for a crossing? Why is that not good enough for you? Can't we have a discussion with them to find a more cost-effective and
Well,
reasonable thing?
I don't know if it'd be more cost effective, because you got no track circuitry out there for a crossing, so you're talking all new.
When you say no track circuit, I mean, there's flashing lights and crossbucks out there now.
Not at the.
There's no
Trailer
arms,
course.
right?
There's not arms, but there's flashing lights and crossbucks.
Are there?
The flashing,
Yes.
yeah.
And this is the only crossing in town that already has constant warning time devices installed, at least according to the FRA inventory forms.
I didn't think there was,
Duncan's got his hand up. Hey, Duncan?
I was just gonna, some good choices are out there. I don't know if it would be at all informative to play games with the FRA formula. And you know, if we know how many golf carts are actually crossing there and just kind of pretended they were cars, what those numbers would look like in terms of like the cost effectiveness, how much benefit would there be to applying something like these measures? Obviously, a grade separation takes you to 0, but it's probably, you know, the question, if we're looking at including something in the zone for the purposes of, you know, funding, among other things, yeah, it does seem problematic.
Again,
But, you know,
the biggest question is the private crossing. Okay, it's doing all that, putting additional lights or gates out there doesn't negate the fact that it's still a private crossing.
Yep.
So the only way to negate that is to eliminate a crossing. Now you don't have a crossing if you go grade separated. So
Wasn't there something that we could, the select board can ask the team not to blow the horn on a private crossing?
That's sort of along the lines of.
Yeah.
of
Right.
Just
negotiating.
negotiating a private agreement with them and simply saying, what level of safety measures do we need to install for you guys to be comfortable to stop blowing the horn?
Yeah.
I'm just
And
not
that-
sure there is one for them, but certainly,
Understood.
and what we've asked them in the past has
Of
indicated
course,
no,
and
but
and
there may be.
I
Well,
would just-
and using the FRA charts even, it seems like we should have some data to talk about risk reduction.
The only thing I would add to what Duncan said about the golf carts is this place is, it's got a lot of kids.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not just people in cars, it's kids sledding, it's kids golfing, it's kids walking their dogs. So it has to be safer. Yeah.
Agreed, and that's
Yeah,
why
I know you agree.
I would never suggest we just negotiate an agreement to turn off the horn
I know.
and not change anything. I mean, I definitely think we need to think about doing something. I'm just wondering. I mean, doing culverts or doing ramps, I mean, it sounds like ramps is out of the question, but even doing the culverts, I mean, I think when you start getting into the zone of influence structurally, the train tracks and everything else, I think it could become a very big monster as compared to doing gates and vehicle presence detection and
Agreed.
whatever else.
I guess the other question I had at this juncture is, if it makes sense to go forward, even if we haven't yet solved the golf course, because every problem has a solution, right? You know, do we start with the others and then just keep, because we're not gonna solve this problem probably by April.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, if we can have an estimate for the design and construction.
I mean,
for the-
I would think that you could easily move forward with the quiet zone from Oak Street through, right? And then, you know, if this is a separate track, so to speak, that was bad. I
Mhm.
didn't. I'm sorry.
You're a dad.
That's separate, if this was, you know, if you separated this out and whether it was, you know, some kind of negotiation offline with the MBTA or, you know, looking at what would be the real cost of putting it underneath, I mean, at least you could move forward with that and, you know, I'm sure you can always amend a quiet zone if you come up with whether it's an amendment to the quiet zone or an agreement with MBTA to not blow the whistle there, you know, to do that separately. I think the other ones are fairly straightforward. I mean, either we look and see what we can do with the exception of Great Plain, because we don't necessarily know what that'll look like yet, but at least the other ones to look at some form of whether a median makes sense, that whether you want to deal with the temporary ones or look at permanent ones, which may require, you know, right of ways. I don't know if you want to get into that. Obviously, if you put a 6-foot median out there, you're gonna have to ship the sidewalks and stuff out. Then you'd probably get into moving the gates and stuff, which it might end up being more cost effective just to put the quad gates in by the time you're done with it, to be honest with you. But we can have those, you know, we can have those.
When will you have
discussions.
real costs, what you think that the quad gates might?
Well, I guess the next step to this group is, you know, what options how far do you want us to look at each kind of those different options? In terms of, I guess the first question is, you know, does the town want to are the flexible medians an option, or is that a nightmare for maintenance and knockdown and snow operations and all that?
I
You
mean,
know?
we haven't pursued them yet,
Not to mention aesthetics.
right? Although the MBTA did put them up on their own near some of these crossings as part of their pedestrian safety measures. But we don't have any right now in our inventory on a right of way. I think we have some in parking lots, but that's about it. And we haven't, the mobility planning committee is exploring conversations about like what the bike lanes and that sort of thing, like, would we ever explore them for that? We don't have
Right.
them, whereas they know in other communities they've had them and broken them and not like them, or.
Well, that's the other
However,
thing. I know a
so-
lot of towns will put them in and then take them out for winter operations too, which
Yeah,
obviously you
Which
couldn't.
we can't
do
do in
for
this,
this.
yeah, cause it's not a choice for additional safety, it's a
Right.
mandatory item. And a few of these roads, like Oak Street is sidewalk, curb on both sides and fairly
Narrow.
narrow.
Well, I mean, if the quad gate costs were what was showed up there, we wouldn't be hassling over it anyway, we'd just put in quad gates, right?
Yeah.
I think it would also be nice to know that question, if you're doing it under just a 2-lane road, can you just do an extra
Yeah.
long gate as opposed to a quad gate? Cause
Yeah.
that obviously has a lot less implications for the sidewalk.
Right.
And also, are we gonna have to put in wayside horns with the pedestrians? Which changes the whole thing of,
Because you still have horns.
you still have, I mean, it's much quieter, but.
Yeah, I think wayside horns are meant to be an alternative
Yeah.
to having the train horns, but for the pedestrians, because right now there is the gates that go down all four corners of the sidewalks.
I think it's something with pedestrian volume too. When I looked at the one in the past, it's when your pedestrian volume goes over a certain amount.
Okay.
Because they fall into that blind, like ADA compliance, but I'm not.
Okay.
Interesting.
They also-
I mean,
The bells are quite loud if you're a
Well, the-
pedestrian.
The bells will stay when they come into the stations.
Yeah.
That's,
Right,
that will stay.
that's
But
not
it
a
wouldn't
problem.
necessarily be Oak or,
No, it's,
May.
it's when they come into the
Right.
station.
so it happens that it coincides with them coming to the stations in a few of the
Yeah.
locations, but not all of them.
Yeah, unless they,
Fortunately, they don't, MBTA's policy is not to blow horns when they come into the station. Other railroads, they would blow the horn coming into the station as well. But they just don't coming in, so.
Well, that's okay, they blow the horns coming up to the
practically
intersection.
the same
Trust-
thing though.
We
because-
get all of it.
Well, no, I know.
need it
Right,
for
It's-
this.
and
need 'em,
they
need 'em.
forget to turn off the horn when they get to the intersection, they blow it, trust me, directly into the station. Duncan, you have a hand up.
yeah, I just wanted to mention, if we're pretty certain that the 4-quad treatment is, an attractive alternative for each of these sites, and it does look like it's kind of gonna work out. Maybe we go ahead at least and get the costs on that. It's not that we might not want to do something else at one of the locations, but I think that the temporary devices are an issue, and I think we'll wind up, the further you extend the treatment from the actual crossing itself, the more sort of secondary issues you're gonna wind up raising and having to resolve. Where, the probably, quite possibly the minimum solution in terms of simplicity, if not cost, would be the quad gate. And, I'm wondering if, we could, get some more resolution on that to see whether we, have a cost issue or any major implementation issues. And maybe consider the others as backup approaches that we might need to resort to.
If it's helpful, Chelsea, as of October, their costs for 4-quad gates is $775,000 per crossing on average. That includes vehicle presence detection, which is basically loops like we're used to when we pull up to a red light that helps it switch to green. Same thing, there's a concern, even though interestingly, the quiet zone calculator deems it less safe to have vehicle presence detection. From what I understand, the acceptance of, at least here with the MBTA, is they want to have it where if a car were to get trapped inside the 4 gates, the sensors are there and reopen 2 gates. So that's one element on cost, and obviously you do the verifying. The other thing, my understanding is, from reading the regulations, we have to have constant warning time devices and power out indicators, which is probably another $400,000 to $500,000 that we need to add to each of the intersections.
Well, that becomes a question. Have we gone so far as to figure out whether they do or do not have that? I was under the impression they had CWT anyway, but I could be wrong.
It's hard to know, the FRA inventory forms say there's only CWT at the golf course, but at none of the other places.
Okay.
And I did not that I know what I'm looking at, but I did go around and try to look at the lights to see if there are any lights on the cabinets, and there doesn't seem to be any power out indicators on any of the little cottages, whatever they're called, that are at these.
Bungalows, yeah, okay.
I believe,
Justin's got his hand
yeah,
up.
sorry, I believe, Beta had done an inventory, where I believe some had it. I remember Duncan, we looked, I forget. I know that there was gonna be some power out indicators that would need, but we already had, I think, in 2 of the intersections, and I think, maybe 1 or 2, and then constant warming timing, was present, I think, in a couple of them, but I think that was available somewhere. I think that, we'd also wanna know whatever option that we end up going through, whether that's the 4-way or the channelization. A is maintenance on these gates. My understanding is once we replace the gates, Needham is responsible for the maintenance of the gates. In terms of financially, obviously not operationally or take carrying that out. And then also the railroad preempt, which I know we mentioned before. I just wanted to have confirmed because that's significant. You know, in terms of flow, if we end up having to, you know, replace the gates, all of our gates, as we've said, are within 200 feet. You know, and I know that future concept plans were for Sudbury, were for an egress possibly on Rosemary, and that would obviously channelization would affect that if that was to come to fruition during the rebuild. So there's a couple things that I just wanted to kind of keep on the horizon as we go through and explore which option is just to get total cost. So.
I'm guessing that preemption is gonna be here in 10 years no matter what, but so.
Yeah.
We have to
True.
factor it in, but it's not necessarily. Is CWT different from positive train control? Those
It
are
is
2
different.
different.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Systems, yeah.
Cause the PCT is here.
Yes, it is, yep.
So you were guessing you thought it was gonna be in the 1.2 million each?
That's right. If we did 4 quad gates, that's right.
It's actually not that far off from the estimate I provided finance committee last year.
Yeah. And a long gate arm might be slightly cheaper.
It could be a little cheap, yeah.
Problem is that then you end up with the issue where you can trap a vehicle in the crossing.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say exactly, so I'm not sure, if I believe MBTA wants the
The quads.
loop presence, the vehicle presence detection.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that they would want the entire crossing to open up. I think
Right.
the idea would be that the outbound gates would just open, and so we would still end up with 2 gates down, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but exactly that. I don't
Which
think they
makes
would want
sense.
it to open up the whole thing, because that would confuse people, I think, if they weren't paying attention.
The other, I don't know if Beta ever got this question answered, if they took it far enough, but, one thing I would need to verify with MBTA is how, whether we can, I mean, concept plans we can do, but what, if it does go to design, whether we can do that, or whether it has to be one of their engineers, and then, moving past that, obviously, it would have to be one of their contractors, certified contractors out there, and I don't know if the town can do that, or would, you know, being paying through MBTA to do it, so those are 2 things that I have to work out, and at the same time, find out like what they get a definite answer on what's out there for, you know, the various other systems and which ones they would require and which ones they desire. So.
If it's helpful, with Chelsea, their hard costs, third party, so Daigle Electric is doing all of the install. That's $3 million for their 6 crossings. If 6 crossings are due 4 quad gates, there's another $1 million in MBTA Keolis service fees for basically doing the
Yeah.
configuration, flagmen during
Yeah.
the construction for safety and all the rest, and then design and engineering. So their total cost is 4.7 million. But of that, $1 million is MBTA Keolis services
That's what I
as
figured.
part of the work.
But did they already have the CWT?
They did. So
Yeah,
that's-
cause they were pre-rule, right? And then they lost it?
They were pre-roll, they lost it, but because of where they are, they've had the constant warning time and the power indicators, and they're on hold because they don't have PTC in place yet. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
waiting for that to be done, for them to be able to do the quiet zone.
So I guess the thing we need to know is when we need the number and what we're gonna go to town meeting with. I mean, that's the next item on the agenda essentially, right? So
Yeah,
how we can get the cost
I
estimate.
mean, it seems like based on all the additional things they're requiring, that really the median is not gonna make a difference that big a difference in terms of cost savings. And would probably just be more of a, not more of a hassle, but less likely to be supported by MBTA than the quad gates.
and it doesn't add that much on the safety index,
Yeah, I mean, obviously the quad gates are the
big, big thing.
most efficient, and because the physically blocking off the tracks.
Well, I mean, the difference in safety benefit between the crossing and the gates and the medians is about a 4% difference.
Yes.
For like 10 times the cost when you're talking about
Right.
the quiet zone software or technology. There's a constant warning time and a power out, which is sort of like we have to do to set the table to be able to do anything.
Base, yeah.
But then between those two, I mean, basically, if you were to do all medians with the, what do you call them, temporary or the.
Yeah, the
whatever,
flexible ones.
Flexible ones, that's like maybe around $3.5 million, whereas if you do the 4 quad gates, you're at $7.5 million. So I mean, it is a meaningful difference. But that ignores all the complications we've been talking about with driveways and turning radii and everything else. So
And
it's-
plowing and
Yeah,
seasonality
exactly.
and,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, there are
So-
other factors, but I mean, it's definitely a meaningful difference in numbers.
all right. And Justin, do you have your hand up again? Is this a new hand?
Oh, no, I've never put it back down, sorry.
All right, great.
And
So
that-
it feels to me like we need to get a decent estimate. And I think learning about what the preemption expectations are, your thought, and I guess I'm curious, Karis, should we be just doing preemption now and just rip off the Band-Aid and do all of it at once?
I think I find it from the MBTA what they want to require, because I think what I'm saying is if the MBTA is going to require us to do preemption, if we modify the signals anyways, then it would make sense to do it.
Well, if they're
If
gonna
they
pay it on the
say-
tip will pay it. But-
Right.
That's true, but I
Yeah.
don't think the tip's happening for 5 or 6 years, so.
So if the T says you don't have to do it now, but you will when you do, Rosemary
The
at,
intersection.
yeah, then.
We can, yeah,
sometime. The question is, I guess the next financing question is, I think we should still find out what the options are at the golf course, but it does feel like we should accelerate the cost estimate for design and construction of the other 5 if we want to go to town meeting. We do want to go to town meeting.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't see us getting to the golf course. But I guess, first,
So how do we want to handle, I guess, call it the appeal process or whatever, is that? Who wants to? I
with the
mean,
MBTA,
yeah, in terms of like, I guess the question is like, that even a reality? Would they entertain, looking at this? I mean, that's what we had originally anticipated, like when I was thinking the meeting out there to see what we could do for this crossing. But, kind of, when I got the email back from Lou basically saying like, there's no reason to have a meeting because it's a private crossing, that's kind of their mindset is we're not even gonna talk about this.
but he's from the
but
FRA,
he's
right?
from
But
the
yeah,
FRA.
I think
if
so
the
we
team
could-
will come
I
out,
think
we
we
should
should
talk
get the
about
MBTA people
If
out
we
and
want,
have
if
that
we want
discussion.
people to get so, have that meeting, whether, I don't know if we have to physically meet out there or if
think
we
we
wanted to, yeah, we can do that, we can set that up.
I think it doesn't hurt to see the real landscape there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're willing to send their people out, they may not. They're not gonna commit, but
Yeah,
they're gonna say the options might be. And then we can get
We've
the
got our
bigger
other
meeting.
meeting that we're trying to get, so, yeah.
Consolidate.
Does it still make sense to take a look at what that, like pretending it was a road? And what the standard metric would be, and then what the reduction would be, if
I mean,
we
I
were
think-
like just
I don't,
pretending that pedestrians and.
I mean, I honestly don't think, I mean, if you look at, you're going from 30 to 45,000 to, 5, 6, 7,000, I mean, you could probably just do a percentage and say, okay, because we don't have a starting risk factor for it, because it's not a crossing.
Yeah.
So we don't know whether that would be 20,000 to 4,000 or whatever, but we can I mean, you can probably average that out and say we're reducing the risk factor by 75% by putting quad gates in.
So what I would also think is, I think Tony's initial thought was you actually didn't need to, it was dual gates, I think he was looking at there, correct? Because of the size, like, two tiny little quad gates going down, so I think he was looking at, reusing the gates
Yeah.
from maybe one of the other locations. Whether that or not,
That's-
that,
So it's the same long gate idea, it's just. a
Short.
different size
Yeah,
crossing,
people
right?
is-
Essentially, it's a long gate is what it becomes. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
That's how we worked it with Beta, sorry for that, but was that an administrative requirement would be sought, whether that would be granted or not is up for discussion and debate, but the repurposing of one of the gates that we currently have, would be repurposed down there. So it wouldn't necessarily be quad.
And that may or may not be feasible. I mean, those gates are, God knows how old, I mean.
Yeah,
might
like I
not.
said, that's what we had, that's what, I mean, that's where we are now is because the Beta might not have been accurate, but that's what was presented to us at the time.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, MBTA might feel like those gates are 50 years old. We're not gonna move them. Once you touch them, they're.
like I said, I just don't know quad gates. I don't
No,
know
I mean,
what
I
you
would
have
think-
that would fit
I mean, I
there.
would think there that you would, like, you probably don't need vehicle detection for
Right.
that crossing, like. I mean, you're basically talking people walking across there, they're gonna find a way to walk under the gate if the
Yeah.
train's coming.
Yeah.
So.
We're
um,
moving from crossbuck only to, an arm. I think there's definitely improvement there for purposes of a discussion with the MBTA.
Right,
When would it make sense to meet again?
well, let me see how soon I can get a meeting out there. And then we'll go from there. In the meantime, we can start looking at, excuse me, what some of these costs will be, at least ballpark for the additional safety equipment plus the gates.
Could we set something for the middle of February just so that we
Yeah.
don't
Have it on the
lose track?
calendar.
I
Yeah,
would think priority wise, though, the focus would be more on cost estimates for the established crossings that we can control, and then secondarily to evaluate the golf course.
Yeah.
Just knowing there's not a lot of time between now and when we're looking for some harder costs.
What do we need to get done by when for purposes of town meeting? I think it was February, right? It was when we needed to lock things down or is that not right?
We have some flexibility, yeah.
Okay.
But, we have to talk about if it's 5 million,
yeah, we need. at
how we're
least
gonna
a
do it.
ballpark
If it's
for how
7,
to
I don't know how we're gonna do it. Like, so we just
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to start figuring. it out. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we can, if we put a sum in the warrant, we can amend it on the floor of town meeting, but
Yeah.
with this kind of number, that's,
Okay, the intent is still to fund construction and design at the same time?
we need to, I mean, that,
We need to
we,
know,
if
yeah.
it can be done, yeah. We also, if we wanted to do design in October, we can fund the rest of it, which is just.
I think that getting some of the answers from then the MBTA about who
Right.
designs what, who bids what, who oversees the project, I think will also be very helpful. So we can figure out what level of responsibility and expectation is being put on the town to provide the service versus
What
them.
the MBTA is doing. I didn't realize they did so much on the healthy one.
Yeah.
So Daigle, I mean, we have Daigle too. Are they Chelsea's
It was
contractor
a
or-
hard bid, so.
by Chelsea?
By Chelsea. So VHB was their transit engineering consultant. They did the diagnostic team review to come up with the scope that was then approved by the FRA and MBTA and everything else. They took that out to bid in April of 2022. It was Daigle and one other group that bid on it. Daigle was the lower bidder, so they were awarded the work. But then included in the budget from VHB is an estimate, because obviously they haven't actually built it yet, from the MBTA and Keolis of what it's gonna take for safety flagmen, doing all the configuration of the cabinets, et cetera.
But all the project management is on the community to provide.
I believe so.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think we have to talk about workload because I have $15 million worth of projects already funded that we're executing this summer, including the ARPA projects that have to be completed. So maybe we can have an offline conversation about just the funding strategy and what we can actually provide as far as services. So I think getting more information
Yeah,
from the
absolutely.
MBTA about what they expect from us. If it's just a matter of us providing them the design and having them execute it, that's a very different expectation than if we're the ones managing that project.
Right. Do we owe going forward? Like, do we, cause we touch it, do we take ownership from it from the MBTA? Is it something that they like kind of do and then it's, oh, you
Maintenance
touched
cost,
it?
that came up too.
Maintenance costs, like, is this now all on, just becomes a.
So what are the
thing of town?
long-term obligations to the town? I think is also helpful as we build out the budget to know, because I think that came up as well when we talked to the finance committee is if we. I'm hoping no one's expecting us to contract staff to maintain it. I imagine it's probably paying the MBTA a
Mhm.
fee
Yeah.
on an annual basis, but knowing what that is when we look at the full financial picture.
So a couple things. So the MBTA in the letter to you, Kate, in 2019 said it was 25 grand per year per crossing. What's not clear is whether that's the total maintenance costs or the incremental. My understanding is they're only allowed to charge the town the incremental cost of the incremental equipment. And then to make it even more giggly is how do they know what's the incremental when they're going into the shed to maintain this set of switches and that set of switches? And so even though the MBTA is given a number, from what I understand, people really haven't ever seen a bill actually be issued because there's not a clean way to really say this is this and that is that, but that is just anecdotal, information.
Is the Cohasset line the quiet zone?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
February. Twelfth or 20th,
20th is school vacation week.
bad for people.
The 12th, I think I have the MPCC, although if we did it early at 5:30.
Isn't that like 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, that's.
Is that enough for John? Are you ready?
I mean, let's put it in. It kind of depends on how responsive MBTA is with the stuff. If I don't hear back from them for 2 weeks, then we can push it out a week or two, but if I, I'll send some emails and start some correspondence tomorrow and see how.
Yeah, they
how
seem to get back to you pretty
They
soon.
seem
I was gonna say, the
Yeah.
crew that I
Yeah.
haven't been in touch with,
they
this
seem to be,
seems much more responsive than
Which,
others.
which is surprising. So 5:30 on the 12th, is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
you away?
No, I have select board office hours at 5 o'clock that day. So maybe we shift it to 4:30 to 5:30, I guess, if this
That's-
is,
Your office hours.
That's
Yeah.
Lincoln's birthday, that's not a problem. That's
No.
not a holiday or anything, is it? What'd you say, 4:30 then?
5:30,
5:30.
5:30, Marion, you'll move your office hours.
almost office hours to 4:30, okay.
All right, John, you'll be in touch if we're gonna go up to the golf course.
Yeah,
Next week.
I'll,
I think some of them said they were holding the dates.
Okay, just checking, we're talking February 12th or March 12th?
February 12th.
February 12th, 2 weeks, basically. Okay.
Three.
3.
3, is that 3 already? Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah,
I just gave you a week.
All right.
And so we're looking to, in those 3 weeks, it's trying to reach out to the MBTA and we're gonna try to capture what the costs are for the various solutions.
well, at least a little more information on like the process of who owns what, who maintains what they're gonna require. I don't think I'll have a final detailed cost for that, but at least we can, if we know what we are, then, we can start getting some of that order of magnitude cost. The information from Chelsea there,
Yeah.
can I get a copy of that?
Yeah, I can send you all the emails, basically, or all the files. I mean,
Yeah,
all this is from their city council meetings. They ask the town manager to report in and then they issue a report. So I
yeah,
have all that.
whatever.
Breaks down all the costs.
I called him, but he's not there now. He's gone. But I did talk to him for a while.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful, especially when we start to figure out what some of these costs are gonna be to know a recent bid.
Yeah, I even have the construction plans and everything, so you
Okay.
can see what they did with repurposing the 2 quad gates, adding the other 2 gates, putting the loop.
All right, I'll set up like a OneDrive folder, you just dump all the stuff in.
Okay,
You said they had VHB,
VHB did it for them, that's right.
but they are 2 years old now at this point, right?
The
bid-
numbers.
yeah.
So, yeah, so the Daigle and the other group, I think it was Pine Ridge, their bid was hard through the end of 2022. And then the PTC put them at full stop, so then they basically are sitting, so I'm sure there will be a cost escalation plus maybe some scope changes, just whenever they're released to actually go. I'm not even sure how they're gonna deal with that, whether they have to rebid it because it's been so long, or I don't know how that works in the municipal world.
Probably.
Probably should rebid it. I'm also just thinking as far as like order of importance. The Great Plain Ave one may be less significant to dig into too deeply. I think kind of finding like what the worst possible scenario is for cost. But given that we might be redesigning that entire right of way, it could look very different depending on what the design looks
Right.
like, right? So I think kind of figuring out, all right, worst case scenario, the road stays as wide as it is right now, what does that cost? And then let us tighten that up based on that design, because we were planning on funding that along with the project for the downtown and not seeking funding for that as part of this initial project. So,
That helps with this budget.
so I guess what I would say is, as far as order of priority, the other intersections would be a higher priority than Great Plain Ave. Though I'm sure the finance committee is gonna want to know the worst possible scenario for Great Plain Ave to factor that into the total of the project.
Yeah.
But that could look very different if you've got 2 lanes of traffic versus 3 lanes of traffic
Right.
versus 4 lanes of traffic. Which are all the scenarios that are currently out there, so.
Maybe your gate arm probably doesn't change that much, because you're still blocking. You know, you'd still be blocking the.
Bikes.
But you
the
could
bikes.
put,
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah,
in
no, I
theory,
know,
you could
yes.
put your infrastructure, let's say you have a
You can move it in.
a berm between your bike lane and your parking spot, you could put the infrastructure for the quad gate there and have it go out as opposed to having it go the entire length. So that one, I imagine there's gonna be a lot. Doing this opens up a lot of possibilities for the downtown, because we have to go for the MBTA for a permit regardless, but I imagine it might. You know, if you do a median, for example, it's gonna look very different, but it's the only road where you have space to do that.
Right.
We could also potentially do the flexible or mountable median as an interim step, right? We get the base infrastructure in place, and then once you figure out how you wanna narrow the road, if that's what's going, you just add in the gates after the fact.
I assume we have to pay the MBTA for permits as well to access the right of way,
Yes.
So we just have to do that twice if that were the case.
John, can you please share the slides from tonight?
Just send them to me, John, or I'll make sure
Yeah.
everybody gets it, unless you have, actually, when you do the whole,
I could
you
do
have
it
your
either
whole
way.
list, just send it, that'd be
I
easier,
can do it either way.
great.
Yeah. Okay. Any other business tonight? All right, we're on our way, making progress,
Motion to adjourn.
and, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would, welcome a motion to adjourn. Unless you all wanna stay here all night.
Who's actually on the committee? Did I hear Justin?
Is that Justin?
Yeah.
And a second,
Sure, second.
all in favor? Actually, technically, I'm supposed to do a roll call, right? Do I have to, do we require
Yes.
that?
Yes, so Duncan, Justin,
Justin, Duncan,
Yay.
did Justin just drop?
he said yes.
I'm not sure he's there anymore. Hello, committee members, who have I got in the room?
Yes.
Lars,
Yeah.
is a yes.
Whatever.
I'm a yes,
Yeah, I think that's it.
okay? It is unanimous. I'm gonna declare it.
Yeah,
We are adjourned.
oh no, I'm a member, yeah.
I thought you were.
I keep forgetting you're not on the finance committee anymore. I keep thinking. Once finance committee, always finance committee, right?
Right. I could have some.